This show is sponsored by Sims Business Systems, Arizona's #1 family-owned technology boutique, serving your copy, print, IT, and teleconferencing needs since 1978. Smartify your business with Sims.
Hi, this is Shawn Sims Bradford. I am your host of Exposing Entrepreneur Secrets, and this is the show where we uncover the secrets of success to amazing business owners, and we get to know their heart, minds, souls, challenges, and triumphs. And today, I am so excited to welcome two incredible ladies. I have with me Allison Colwell and Michelle Shelor with Colwell Shelor Landscape Architects. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on. I have been so thrilled getting to know you two better. You two are incredible. You started your firm, your landscape architect firm, just 10 years ago. And in that time, you have won over 25 awards. You have been written up in over 25 publications. You do both public and private work. And your creative genius just shows through on every job you do. And I want to get to know first when you both felt this creativity. Allison, tell me when you knew you had this creative flair inside of you.
Well, I was an architect first.
Mm-hmm.
So in sixth grade, we had to make some homes. And mine just became this like over-the-top mansion with, 200 rooms. It took so much time. And I was like hooked from then on. So it took me a long time to find landscape architecture, which is a better fit to the soul. But that was the beginnings of it.
I can totally picture a 6-year-old or a small Allison putting together this amazing house that just kept growing and growing. That's awesome.
It wasn't good.
Says you, and look what you do now. Michelle, what about you? When did you feel this creative genius brewing inside of you?
I think it's probably always been there. My father was an architect, and we were raised in a kind of old school modernist way of thinking, and I have another degree in history and political science, and that didn't quite work out, and I took this little garden design class at the community college, and the professor was like, you really should go do this. And so I decided that I was going to go into design. I knew I didn't want to go into architecture because it's a very strenuous profession, but I thought, this is easy to do, and it just flows naturally.
And what I love is you found your calling and you followed it. And when I am on your website, you ladies have won so many awards, and it's really only been a decade. You were named the 2019 Masters of the Southwest and Arizona ASLA President's Award for Design. You also won, and that's just 2 of the 25 plus awards. So obviously you're both living your calling, but 10 years ago, so that was 2009, you started during the recession. I wouldn't think people were spending extra monies on design necessarily. Were there some challenges during that time?
I think definitely there were. We weren't laid off from a firm or anything like that. We just decided that after we got registered, and we both became registered, we wanted to start our own firm, and it just happened to be at the bottom of the recession. And we read all these articles that AIA had published and said, oh, the best time to start a firm is in the bottom of a recession because it allows you to get all your ducks in a row.
Oh, okay.
So I think one of the biggest challenges, we didn't have any projects. And so we didn't pluck from our previous firms that we worked for, and we just had to go hit the ground running.
And I would say one thing that still, even to this day, is that we are more creative and we don't necessarily have a business acumen. And we had to learn that as we went. So it was very challenging learning to run a business.
Luckily, we have 2 husbands that helped us along the way.
Bless
that kind
their
of told
hearts.
us how to do the business part of it.
And again, all of that support because you found your calling and this creativity, and we'll get more into these amazing projects that you have done, both public and private. They're incredible. Now, when you did have those initial challenges, how did you crawl out of them? How did you get out of them during those first few years when you didn't have any projects? Like, what did that look like?
I think that, what we did was we banked a whole bunch of money. We saved up and we said, okay, for 6 months, we're not going to take a paycheck.
Wow.
And, it turned out it was probably about 6 or 8 months before we took our first little paycheck. But that is one of the first things, I think, when you start your own business is that you need to save up some money before you do it.
Right. I think it was also interesting is that we spent a lot of time on design. So we had the luxury to do that then, and we were able to really work on kind of our brand and our aesthetic. And then because we spent all that time redoing things, perfecting them, I think that that's probably why we won an award. And then it helped kind of the other people learn about us.
Yeah.
And so the awards, they drew more business to you because
Yes.
the creative work was published and people could see what you could
Definitely.
do. So I would think then at some point, because of this mounting success from you staying so true to your creativity, that you did have to hire some more employees. When did that happen?
That was about 3 years in, 2.5, 3 years, I think. And we debated for like 6 months.
Because it meant us not taking a paycheck again.
Oh.
And I think the other funny thing is we called ASU and said, we had an architecture student. It was just part-time, 20 hours a week in this little room.
300 square feet, the three of us.
The poor guy.
You're Danny.
The lucky guy. I bet he learned so much from you ladies.
Well, he went on to do well. So
Yes.
it didn't hurt him any.
So what is your advice to others that are super creative that are also running a business? How have you learned how to pair both of those arts, your creativity side and the business side?
Well, one thing is that we talk a lot about who's good at what, and we split it up. And there's still some things we're not good at, and we definitely hire for those kind of things. But we work as a team all the time to kind of strengthen that. And there's kind of a joke going around between us that two brains, the two of us make one brain.
Yes.
I love that, though. I mean, you've learned from working together, just like a marriage. It's a partnership of who does what best, who doesn't do something as good, and you share in the responsibilities.
I think it took like probably 7, 8 years before we really realized, what each of our strengths were and what we were bringing to the table. So,
Because we both want to do it all.
yeah. And in reality, you can't do it all.
And that's such a beautiful life lesson because I especially think as women, we want to do everything.
Definitely.
How did you eventually just let go to say, you know what, I'm going to put this aside, I'm going to surrender it, and I'm going to just trust? That's a big process.
Right.
How did that happen?
Good question. We're still trying.
Yeah, it's a learning.
I think it's a little bit at a time, and the training, training others to take a bigger role, becoming better listeners, because there's great ideas out there, and they may not really be something we came up with or our aesthetic, but that's been, a real challenge is just having faith in our employees and letting them rise to the occasion and kind of guiding them along the way.
And that, to me, sounds like the keystone of a good leader is the guiding and empowering the other person to rise up. And it sounds like you ladies are doing that for your people.
We're trying.
We're always trying, right? We're always trying. I want to get into some of these amazing projects you have done and also to paint a picture for our listeners. When I first approached you two, I knew I wanted to interview you both. The first thing I ask is about planting and gardening, and I kind of got a look because you do so much more than that. You have worked in so many public spaces. You have worked at ASU. Give me some other public spaces that you've worked at. We're going to get into Scottsdale Museum of the West, but what are some others?
Many of the community colleges we've worked.
We're doing a public plaza for the city of Mesa right now.
That's right. Okay.
And
Hotels.
So all these public places, and then I'm reading about Scottsdale Museum of the West, and you stated a fact that Scottsdale receives only about 9 inches of rain per year. And so one of the main concepts of this project was water harvesting, which gets into your love and your knowledge of sustainability. Can you walk us through that project and everything involved in it and take us away from my misconception of plants?
So we were asked to be part of a team with Studio Ma, these fabulous architects, and we were really excited about the project. And what we always try to do is add a sustainable component to every one of our projects, whether it's a residential project or a large public project. But so we asked the city if we could do some water harvesting, and they were a little reluctant. And we were able to get the first bioswale in downtown Scottsdale through the city, and then it just kind of snowballed. So we started working with the mechanical engineer on taking the condensate from the museum, because a museum has a lot of condensate because you have to keep the temperature level. And so we harvest that, and it waters the gardens. And we're taking the roof water, that's a really easy one. I think the challenges are taking the condensate and doing street water runoff. And it's all bringing back to the site. It's cleaning it, and then it goes out to the storm drain.
That is incredible. So how did you obviously had this vision, the two of you, that nobody had bought into yet, but you could obviously see, and you knew you had to take it through and see it to fruition. How did you bring this vision into life and get other people, the city, to buy in?
Well, I would say one thing is a lot of other cities do require this, and that was one way we were able to convince Scottsdale to try it. We brought examples of other cities and what they would look like, and data about how much water you would save by supplementing the irrigation. And then not only that, it wasn't just this functional, kind of retention area on the side. It was just a very defined space that also allowed people to sit in them. It provided a social component. So I think all those things combined are why we were able to do that.
And that added extra water really helps a landscape. Everyone's like, oh, we don't get enough water, but it is amazing if you looked at a garden that doesn't harvest water and you look at a garden that does, and the garden that does is always greener, the trees are always larger. So it's important for the desert.
That is important, and I am just completely inspired over here because you took your vision and you made it work, which is no small feat. And what projects are you involved in right now where you're also seeing your visions come to life, where there's maybe some, not challenges, but things you have to work through?
Well, another one that was similar to that in the way of bioswales being a really defining piece was on the ASU campus. It's called the Orange Mall Green Infrastructure Project, which means that you are not mechanically getting rid of water. You're using it, you're containing it, you're cleaning the water. So all the surface water for this huge area around campus comes into these central bioswales that give the center of the campus a green heart.
Oh.
So it really transformed asphalt road into a pedestrian thoroughfare. And then there's these giant swaths of trees and birds and social space for the students.
And that's incredible. I can picture it. You're providing a place for community, for connection, for support, for beautiful things to develop, and you are doing it in these beautiful spaces that are sustainable, such as, taking water from the roof and then watering the gardens and plants. I mean, it's incredible, and I love that you ladies are involved in that. That's a huge vision. And you ladies, besides all this inspiration you give to your, quote unquote day job, you're winning awards left and right. You are serving on Girl Scouts. What else are you doing in your free time, Allison?
I love to hike, so that's what I do on weekends and
work.
Oh yeah,
and work. Are you always working?
Weekends.
Is your brain always going?
It wasn't always like that, but it's like that right now. It's just.
And I actually have a question for both of you, and we'll get back to how you're both recharging because I think it's important. But are the creative bursts, are they coming from the brain? Are they coming from the gut? Like where do they birth from?
I think it's both. This is a profession that you just don't check in and out. It's a lifestyle. And as designers, you can't turn it off. You could be up at 3 o'clock in the morning, scrolling your iPhone to look for different ideas or...
Yeah, I got up at 4 this morning, 4:18. Started working away on this courthouse project.
And it's just like, do you get the inspirations from a dream? Do they just pop up when you're hiking? Do you keep a little notepad? Like, how are you keeping track of these bursts of inspirations?
I think mine is just traveling. So that's kind of how I relax is I travel a lot, and a lot of my inspiration comes from architecture and seeing different parts of the world, and how can we bring those ideas to the desert in a very sustainable way.
Yes. Yeah, which is beautiful. And what about, thank you, Michelle, Allison, when you're hiking, are you recharging? What does that do for you?
Well, I think it's just being in nature really helps kind of all the detail go away. And it just, I think when your brain relaxes, then I'm able to think better and think more creatively.
Mm-hmm. I did that with the creative earlier, too. All right, I want to ask both of you with these incredible, I picked one that just spoke to me. You have so many amazing projects on your website, and the way you describe them, too, you bring them to life by looking at the photos, and I can imagine myself there. Do you ladies remember doing the hummingbird house?
Yeah.
And I just love how, I'm just going to read how you describe it. It's comprised of a progression of landscape experiences. A colorful native landscape along the entrance drive gives way to a more formal experience as one moves through the auto court to the front entry. I love just feeling that experience and how you bring somebody's ideas to life. How do you do that? I mean, when somebody's telling you, this is what I want, how do you take what they want and put it into design and then bring that to a physical structure? How does that happen in a couple of sentences?
Lots of sketching.
Lots of sketching, okay. So that's where the creativity's flowing into like the sketching with the pencil and the pad?
We start out very loose and come up with some ideas and sketch them. And, you got to measure and take pictures and spend time in the field.
Precedent imagery is really important because most of the time the clients can't visualize. That's why
That's how I am.
Hire us.
Yeah.
And so you have to provide precedent imagery.
Okay. And what does that mean exactly?
It means either it's a photo that has this feel that you're trying to convey to the client, or it's the style of a bench or the style of a garden.
Okay.
So just being better communicators through imagery, and then eventually the construction documents, which the contractor uses to build the garden.
So you ladies are working with contractors day in and day out. How do you make sure the integrity, the creativity of your design gets built in the vision of you and your client? Did I just like unpack something big there?
Tenacity.
Right. Tenacity is right.
It's a challenge in this industry because the contractors might not care as much about the landscape. They do inherently. They just don't always realize that they do. And so it seems like it's less important to them, maybe the precision that really needs to happen. Mm-hmm. So that's one challenge. And
I think being women in this profession is difficult.
I can imagine.
Not necessarily in landscape architecture or architecture. I think it's more of the construction part. Mm-hmm. And that has been probably one of our biggest challenges, is working with contractors. And, they'll listen to a man more than they'll listen to a woman.
Right, of course. Like. And, well, that's kind of ingrained in history, right? So what are you doing to make sure, again, your voice is heard, you're making sure that everything that you have put in a drawing that you and your client have agreed to is coming to life? Like, if you see something veering off where you're thinking, no, that is not exactly how the design was, how do you handle that? I mean, that's a life lesson for all of us listening.
We're still learning.
Right, as we all are. But what does that look like? I mean, do you really have to just put your foot down? Do you have to, how do you navigate that?
Yell and scream. No, we don't.
I love it. I love it. Sometimes, though, we've got to get a little loud, right?
Well, one thing that we try to do is just you have to really document what you want. You have to communicate, think ahead, be on the job site, help them see what's coming, make sure your drawings are clear, that they can't contractually not do what you've asked them to do. And then beyond that, it is just kind of sticking up for it. And sometimes we win those battles and sometimes we don't. And I think the other thing is just realizing that the design seems to get chipped away at from the very beginning. Whether it's utilities in the way or other things that people need or access or poor maintenance, there's so many things that can chip away at the design. So having a really strong vision and design and documentation is a must.
Absolutely.
A lot of people think that landscape architecture or the landscape is not important, but if you ask somebody what is a really great space in a city, most of the time they'll talk about the street they drove down or walked down that was lined with trees and has this romantic feel. And you're like, that's what we're trying to give you. And I just think that during the process of design and construction, people forget about that.
And I love that you're reminding them of that, because even though we don't know it, I think of any time I'm out with my family and maybe after we go to the movies downtown here, we are drawn to sit and gather by a water feature, by beautiful trees, by interesting architecture. And it also provides a feeling, even if we don't know it, of that feeling of relaxation and just and that's what you ladies are creating.
Right.
And that's amazing. And I love that you're painting the visual for all of us so I can see that skill in both of you to make these visions come to life. Because as we're talking, I'm picturing my family and I sitting in these beautiful spaces. Now, with the last few minutes that we have, I want to ask each of you to share with me your sweetest success to date. Maybe your favorite project, your sweetest victory, something that just stays in your heart. I don't know who wants to start, Michelle or Allison.
Allison, you can go.
Oh, come on.
What's been your favorite project? Can you name am I asking you to name your favorite child?
The favorite project is the one you're working on now, I think.
Yeah, you know what? They all have some meaning, for you. I think it's really hard to grasp that. I mean, the one that we always kind of gravitate towards is the Scottsdale Museum of the West, because it's very textural. It's creating, these gallery gardens outside. It has a great story. And we did a lot on the project for the exterior spaces. And so, that always is, I think, very dear to both of us. But again, there's like some really great projects we're working on now that
will be just as cool.
I know. As soon as I said that, I'm like, that's like asking you to pick your favorite child.
Yeah.
I would never answer that. So tell me, ladies, let's say we have a young professional just starting out in landscape architecture. What words of wisdom would you give to this young professional?
Well, I would say just dive in. Get, work for a good firm and keep sketching, keep your ideas flowing, and enjoy.
Oh, have fun with it, right?
Yeah.
I like that, Allison. What about you, Michelle?
I think that I look at it a little differently. I kind of took a different route when I graduated. And, I think that my idea, I read this article one time in Architect magazine, and there was this young architect, and she had worked for like 25 firms in like 3 years. But her idea, might not have been 25, but it was a lot. Her idea was to take, and they were all like top firms in the world, was to take, a little bit from each one of them, and so she could figure out how to develop herself as a designer. And so I worked for a lot of firms, and I'm not saying that everyone should do that, but you don't always know what you're good at in the very beginning or what you really want to work on. And so I remember I only wanted to really work on residential when I graduated, but now we're working on large, public projects, and I enjoy them just as much. And so I think that finding a firm that has a broad range of different projects is
allows
important.
you to have a voice and just do.
And just it sounds like being open and allowing yourself to keep exploring your creativity at a deeper level. And one final word of wisdom to people listening: a lot of creative folks may struggle a little bit with getting business underway. And you ladies have obviously had a lot of support. You have led with that creative heart. Anything else there that you want to give creative folks some insight into?
You have to have tenacity. You have to just keep going.
Yeah.
Even when the chips are down, we wake up the next morning and we're like, okay, it's another day, and how are we going to make the best of this?
It's true. Design is personal, and it doesn't always appeal to everyone. You have to just keep trying to understand what the needs are and what the feeling is and who your client is, and keep going.
I love it. Learning tenacity and keep moving forward is beautiful words of wisdom for business, for life, for every day. You ladies are incredible, and I know people right now are thinking, how can I see their work? Because they are going to be blown away when they see the vast creativity that's displayed on the pages and pages of your website. How can they find you?
You're so nice.
Yes, thank you.
This has been incredible. I mean, your work is ingenious. So how can they find you?
It's colwellshelor.com.
Can you spell it?
COLWELLSHELOR.com. I don't know why we named our firm.
Yeah. We couldn't come up with another creative idea.
Hey, your names say it all. Ladies, thank you for spending time with me. I appreciate you both. Thank you.
Thank you.